And then finally, the last playoff game that we need to break down, and maybe the most intriguing, is the Tennessee Volunteers at the Ohio State Buckeyes. This line is about 7.5. The total is 46.5. It'll be 8 o'clock Eastern time on ABC. Just the second time these two teams have played. They played in the 1996 Sugar Bowl. They played in the 1996 Citrus Bowl. That was the 95 season. That was Peyton Manning at quarterback, Eddie George at running back for Ohio State. And the Volunteers ended up winning that game 22-14. Now, the Buckeyes are back in the college football playoff for the 6th time. That's the 3rd most of any school. Only Alabama and Clemson have made it more often than the Buckeyes. But Ohio State is looking to win their first national championship since 2014. The Tennessee Volunteers are newcomers to the CFB. They're looking for their first national title since 1998. And of course, when you got SEC against Big Ten, what more could you possibly want? Over the last 5 years, the SEC is 15-8 against the Big Ten in all games and 12-5 against the Big Ten in the postseason. So worth noting there, if you have a lean based on conference affiliation, maybe you would be leaning a little bit in favor of Tennessee. Ohio State, meanwhile, has not beaten an SEC team since 2014. That's when they beat Alabama in the Sugar Bowl in the college football playoff semifinal, and they went on to win the national championship. They've lost their last 3 games against the SEC. All of those games have taken place in the postseason. Question number 1. Can Ohio State's offensive line neutralize the line of scrimmage? This has been a big topic of debate, right? The O-line for the Buckeyes is without question their biggest weakness heading into the college football playoff. The unit has had some challenges ever since they lost Josh Simmons there in the season-ending injury against Oregon. He was the left tackle. So since week 7, they have been really inconsistent with their pass protection. They haven't really been able to move people off the ball with the same regularity. And they have potentially found a bit of a cohesion, but let's take into account who they might be playing against. This is going against an elite Tennessee defensive front. I think it's the best defensive front that Ohio State has seen on the edges. I think Michigan was better on the interior, but I think with the edges and the interior combined, this might be the toughest challenge for Ohio State this year. James Pierce is a one-man wrecking ball on the left side. Could play on the right as well, but he's one of the most dynamic pass rushers in the country. He can win with speed, he can win with power, and he needs to be neutralized if the pass protection is going to hold up for Will Howard. Question number 2. There's been a lot of talk about the Ohio State offensive line, but can we for a moment just talk about the Tennessee offensive line? No, I think they're rock solid. Guard to guard, I think they're rock solid. Okay, they play hard. They're physical. I think they have a good understanding of who they are. I think their style helps, the tempo that they've utilized at times, that helps guard to guard. But I do think their tackles are a bit of a liability, especially when it comes to pass protection. Lance Hurd at left tackle, John Campbell at right tackle. They have loads of penalties. Campbell at right tackle has 11 penalties on him this year alone. Now those tackles are going to be working against Jack Sawyer, who I think's had a really nice season. And Ohio State's gotten a little bit more creative with their looks down the stretch. They can give you some different variety. They can give you some looping and some pressures and some blitzes and buying offensive linemen and attacking specific parts of the opposing offensive line that they think they have an advantage against. I bet you anything they try to attack the tackles in this game. And I also think Tennessee is going to have some challenges with what they're going to face from this Ohio State defensive front. Question number 3. Can Tennessee effectively run the football? Dylan Sampson is probably as good of a running back that no one really talks about in the entire sport. The guy's gone for over 1,400 yards this year. He's actually nearing 1,500. He's got 1,485. And Tennessee's running the ball more than 50% of the time. So 53% of their offensive snaps, they're handing it off. That's the 21st highest rate in the FBS. That's a huge shift from what Josh Heupel has been in the past. But what Tennessee does is it's all RPO-based offense. So they basically force you to make a decision defensively. If you want to walk guys into the box, they'll throw it on you. If you want to keep guys out wide, they'll run it on you. The teams that have had the most success against Tennessee this year are the teams that did not stack the box. They just stopped it with their interior 6, their 2 linebackers and their 4 down defensive linemen. Teams that really shut them down, Georgia, Arkansas, those 6 players played great against Tennessee, and they kind of kept Dylan Sampson and this rushing attack in check. They will also utilize Nico Iamaleava in the run game as well. Pretty good on the zone reads, pretty good on the scramble drill. So he is another guy that Ohio State will have to account for in the run game to slow down this rushing attack. Question number 4, can Will Howard and these wide receivers carry this team to victory? Now, Will Howard coming into the season was thought to be kind of the biggest question mark, right? I think when you look at how he performed for a vast majority of the year, he's been great. When he's been protected, he's played very well. People will look and nitpick the Michigan game. I don't think he played well against Michigan, but I don't think he was alone in playing poorly against the Wolverines. So I would expect him to bounce back in this performance and to play a little bit better against a group at the second level and in certain spots that I think you can take advantage of. I do think the Ohio State wide receivers against the Tennessee secondary has a chance to be one of the best matchups in the entire game. You look at Jeremiah Smith against Jermod McCoy, that's a big time matchup. I think Jermod McCoy is super physical. I think he's great with his eyes. And I think Jeremiah Smith, who has excelled in making contested catches all year, this will be a step up in the level of physicality he's likely going to face when he tees it up against Jermod McCoy. But I think with his length, Jeremiah Smith is still an outrageously difficult cover. So it'll be very interesting to see who wins that matchup. Not to be overshadowed, though, is Carnell Tate on the other side working against Ricky Gibson. Now, Ricky Gibson hasn't been quite as good as Jermod McCoy, but he's been rock solid. And when things haven't been going for their other 2 wide receivers, how many times this year has Carnell Tate stepped up to the plate and hit a grand slam? He's been very, very good when taking advantage of the secondary cover man, or in some cases, the tertiary cover man for the opposing defense. Then the one that might be the most impactful in this game. We're going to spend a ton of time on Carnell Tate, a ton of time on Jeremiah Smith, but the guy that needs to be talked about in this matchup in particular is Emeka Egbuka. He's going to be going against Boo Carter. Boo Carter's a freshman, and I think he's going to have his hands full against one of the best slot receivers in the country. That's a matchup that Ohio State can and should win rather convincingly. Egbuka against Carter. And if I'm Will Howard, that's a matchup that I'd be looking to take advantage of early and often throughout the game. Question number 5. Will Tennessee's passing attack hit some shots downfield? Now, I think that's a little bit of a misconception with how good Nico's been as a thrower this year. As a quarterback in general, he's been fine, but it's been a bit of a work in progress. Just so you have a comparison, in 2023, the quarterback for Tennessee was Joe Milton. His total QBR was 69.7. So not bad, but certainly not at the top, middle of the pack there in college football. Well, this year in 2024, Nico Iamaleava's quarterback rating, QBR, is 70.5. So he's only 0.8 points higher than Joe Milton was a year ago in total QBR. Iamaleava has 5 wins this year in which he threw for less than 200 yards. That's the most by any SEC quarterback this season. I think Brew McCoy, Squirrel White, Chris Brazzell, those will be the 3 wide receivers he turns to. But the good news is with Tennessee's passing attack is all it takes is 1. If he can hit 1 downfield throw, that changes the way you want to play this group defensively. If he can find some opportunities, work in the middle, that would be huge because a lot of this offense will break towards the middle because of the influence that the play action could have on the safeties and the dedication from safeties to stop in the run. So I don't think Nico has to be spectacular, but he does have to hit 1 or 2 shots downfield. Those might result in 14 points, and 14 points might be all you need to potentially win this game. And then question number 6. If the Buckeyes get off to a slow start, will their fans turn on them? This has been a question that's been asked time and time and time again. I've been around Ohio State enough to know that while their fans expect greatness, their players do too. Their coaching staff does too. I think that this Ohio State group is still remarkably loyal, and I think they're going to create a very hostile environment for the Tennessee Volunteers. Yes, everybody's mad about Michigan. Yes, everybody's had a bad taste in their mouth the last few weeks. But guess what's still very much a possibility for this team here a few games from now is an opportunity to win the national championship. I still think Ohio State will 100% be behind their players and their coaches. And while the Michigan loss hurts, it can be avenged with a great run throughout the postseason. So question number 6, I'll answer it for you. I think it's ridiculous. But if the Buckeyes get off to a slow start, it will be something worth monitoring in the game. The trend in the game, Tennessee has lost 21 straight road games against top 10 teams. Their last win came at number 10 Georgia in 2006. This is the 4th longest active streak among power conference teams. Indiana, by the way, has a streak similar, and it's the longest streak for Tennessee in program history. I'm taking Ohio State in the game. I'm actually going to lay the points. I also think it's going to be a low-scoring affair. I think way too much attention has been paid to the shortcomings of Ohio State in their most recent game, and not enough attention is being paid to the great moments that Ohio State had throughout the other 11 games of the season. I think we see Ohio State's best in this performance. I think Ryan Day knows they need it. I think the defensive plan will slow down an offense that has at times been a little bit inconsistent. And I think their defensive front will take advantage of the edges of the offensive line for Tennessee and create a lot of problems for Nico Iamaleava. I like Ohio State to win this game comfortably. And I also think their defense will slow down Tennessee in the process.